Hi everyone, Linda from Let's Talk Prepping. And let's look at some of the news headlines today. We do know about the power grid sabotage in North Carolina, and what that should tell you is don't take anything for granted. Get ready, be prepared, know what you're going to do if there's a power grid outage in your area. And this could last for a pretty long time, so it's not just going to be a few hour outage or an overnight outage. So just think about what you would have to do for you and your family to survive that. So let's go look at some of the things making headline news. Okay, we're over here at petersweden.com, petersweden.com. And Bill Gates is pushing for a digital ID, and he gave $1.27 billion to Agenda 2030. And what he wants is a global digital ID. And he says it's going to help with public health threats, pandemic recovery, and climate change. So he's pushing for this. And eventually it's probably going to go through. Some other countries first, and then they'll try to get it here. And once you have a digital ID that's global, you'll need it to do any kind of traveling, and eventually maybe even traveling within the United States. You don't know. So the thing to do now is to try to keep it from ever happening. Talk to people. Talk to all these people who say, oh, it's just will be really great because it'll be so convenient. Let them know that once there's a digital ID, they will have no privacy whatsoever. They will be under the control of a one world government, not even a government that they elected. So let's do everything in our power to keep it from happening. And then if we go over here to WayneDupree.com, and it says, meet the new George Soros. She's American, richer, prettier, more powerful, and much more dangerous. And she is the widow of Steve Jobs, Lorene Jobs. And she's using her money and power to fight the cultural war in ways we can't even imagine. Her net worth, I can't imagine this either, is $24.5 billion, the fifth richest woman in the world. And because she's American, she can get her sticky mitts into everything with no one blinking an eye. And of course, one of the main focuses is going to be climate change. And it will be used as an excuse to implement tyrannical rules and regulations so they can control people. And it says, but climate change is even better because there's literally no end to it. And she has a project called the Emerson Project, which is very mysterious. And it says down here that the Emerson Collective is basically a gigantic progressive super PAC that is working to take over media, education, art, fashion, and everything, basically. She's beefing up her political operation, bringing in heavyweights like former Massachusetts Congressmember Joe Kennedy to broker relations in Washington, D.C. And he says, trust me when I say this woman is dangerous to freedom, patriotism, and America first. She is quietly working behind the scenes to make sure none of that happens. So think about that. We have this person with oodles of money, can do anything she wants, and she's working against, let me go back here again, she's working against freedom, patriotism, and America first. So I'm not sure what we can do about her, but pay attention. You'll be seeing her name, I imagine, pretty frequently in this near future. And when you see her name, it won't be for anything good. And the dailymail.com, actually it's a dailymail.co.uk, dailymail.co.uk. And we had a disabled Canadian Army veteran, a Paralympian, and she complained about how long it was taking to install a stair lift in her home, and that's when a Veterans Affairs staffer offered her medically assisted suicide instead. It says, after years of frustrating delays in getting the home lift, the caseworker told her, "Madame, if you are really so desperate, we can give you medical assistance in dying now." And Canada now has a lot of euthanasia programs that people can use, and that, as you can see, they're saying, here, we can offer you this. And medical assisted suicide was first legalized in Canada for terminally ill patients in 2016, but last year they expanded it to offer euthanasia to patients whose natural death is not believed to be imminent. See, previously it had to be imminent. Now people with long-term disabilities can also receive medical assistance in dying. Last year, more than 10,000 people in Canada died by euthanasia. And then starting next year, a new law will allow people suffering from mental illness, which was not a qualifying condition before, to receive medically assisted suicide. And you can see how the suicides have gone up over the years in Canada. So how does this affect you and me? Medically assisted suicide. At some point, I would imagine that as you get to be elderly and they decide that you're costing too much in the medical system, that they will prescribe medically assisted suicide. Instead of just offering it to people, will say, we're going to give it to this person. And maybe you wouldn't even know it if you're in the hospital. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that and go into it, but think about it. Once it becomes mainstream and it becomes acceptable, more and more acceptable, the easier it will be to give it to people who are costing the medical system a lot of money. Will it happen? Don't know. But if I were a betting person, I would say in the next maybe 10 years, probably a high probability. And here's one that's a little bit better for you, newstarget.com. Prepper food supply, optimizing calories for your survival stockpile. And they go through here and they show you, if you garden all the vegetables, how many calories you get from the various servings of these vegetables. So that will give you an idea of what to plant, because you're going to need calories to sustain yourself. So you can go through here and you can see the various calories and what calorie-dense foods you can plant in order to sustain yourself. And this, again, is News Target. And this is all newspipeline.com. Ready to pay even more for food? Expert predictions show more inflation and continued shortages throughout 2023. Some of these prices may never come down again. I would say the majority of prices will never come down again. So continued inflation and continued shortages through 2023. Gas is still more expensive today. Food banks are bracing for a harsh Christmas. And here's a graph of food inflation. And you see when it just went down a little bit in October, and that's what Biden keeps saying, oh, it went down. Well, it'll probably going to go back up. And he says down here, and this is really important, prepping is no longer for SHTF scenarios or potential catastrophic weather events or terror attacks. So prepping is now a must to survive the Biden regime and the policies and the attacks against farmers and continued inflation. So this is very important. Prepping is necessary because of the inflation and the shortages. And they talk about the food shortages we expect to see in 2023. Bread, sunflower and palm oils, canned food, and pet food. And if we go over here to Yahoo News that they talked about, these food shortages could continue into 2023. We are on our way to a raging food catastrophe, and the world appears to be indifferent. So which items could be in short supply next year? Bread. So bread in 2023. Sunflower and palm oil shortages. Champagne could be hard to find next year. Beers, canned food, and pet food. The aluminum shortage, which started in 2020, has no end in sight. Labor shortages, the pandemic, the ongoing supply chain crisis has increased demand and are to blame. As far as aluminum shortages ending, experts are hesitant with predictions. The most agree the earliest expected end to the aluminum shortage would be in 2023. So this was from Yahoo News. And then PepsiCo to lay off hundreds after price hikes as consumer strength questioned. So PepsiCo is going to lay off hundreds, just one of the many companies here that have been laying off. So those are the things that are happening now. Many companies are laying off. So if you have a job, you're lucky right now. And maybe you should start planning in case your company decides to lay off what you will do. What kind of skill do you have? What could you learn? Could you make money online? How would you survive? Maybe you should start thinking about that now. And if you have any comments, please let us know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.